In today's video, I'm going to be demoing, reviewing, swatching, and doing comparisons for some of the new shades of Lisa Eldridge's Gloss Embrace lip gloss that have recently come out. So if that sounds good to you, just keep on watching. Before we get into it, if you're new here, welcome. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, I would love for you to consider doing so. I do a ton of content on Lisa Eldridge makeup, as well as other high-end and luxury brands, and I like to focus on some indie makeup as well. And I film everything in natural light, so my goal is always to show the products as clearly and accurately as I possibly can. I like to do a combination of reviewing and trying out new makeup, but also dipping into my collection and playing with older makeup that I have. So if all of that sounds good to you, I would love for you to consider subscribing. And now let's get into these new glosses from Lisa Eldridge. Let's get into the lip swatches and shade descriptions first, and then we'll get into some comparisons and just talking about these new colors. This is the first time with these 8 new shades that we're seeing Lisa bring out a version of her lip gloss which is essentially transparent. She's brought out 2 shades that have a clear transparent base with a little bit of shimmer in them, and I bought both of them, so I'm going to start out with those because I know that they don't have any real pigment to them and they won't change the shade of my lips at all for the other shades that I have. So I'm going to start out with Dancing Rose, and it is described as a blend of rose pink, lavender, and violet, tiny glittering pearls suspended in a clear glossy base, resulting in a cool toned, subtly sparkling iridescence. So I thought that sounded really interesting. I've been wanting her to come out with a clear gloss ever since she brought out this formula in the first place, so I'm very excited to see these 2 clear versions. There it is on my hand, so you can get a sense of those shimmers, and on the lips. So there is just one dip into the tube all over the lips, and I'll build it up. So a little bit more shine perhaps with that second application, but it looks pretty much the same. And I felt that actually one dip was quite enough. It felt very nourishing and hydrating on the lips with just the one dip into the tube here. So I don't think 2 is really necessary, but that feels very nice as well. And I like how this is just bringing out my natural lip color a little bit more. That's what I love about a clear gloss, is the ability to just slightly enhance your lip color, but without changing it at all. And the little shimmers in there I find are very subtle. It does add a little bit of a slightly cool toned effect, but without actually really changing the color of the lip. So I really am enjoying this Dancing Rose shade. Now let's move on to the other clear shade, which is Silent Sun. So Silent Sun is described as the finest dense gold pearl swirled into a transparent glossy base. Once on the lips, the pearl is only subtly discernible for the most delicate, luxuriously golden luster. And Lisa says it puts her in the mind of artist Olafur Eliasson's work, Your Solar Nebula 2015. So I'll have to look that up and see what she's talking about. I'm not familiar with that piece of work. So there is the swatch of Silent Sun, and you can see it compared to Dancing Rose. You definitely see a little bit more of that kind of warm golden sheen with Silent Sun, a little bit more of that cool pinky sheen with Dancing Rose. So there's one doe foot full of Silent Sun. And let's build it up. Here's Silent Sun built up. I don't know if the difference between these 2 transparent shades is really going to show very much on camera, but in real life I can see, I think on camera you can kind of see that this is just a little bit of a warmer version of what we were getting from Dancing Rose. So still just enhancing the natural lip color, not really altering it at all, but I do feel like it's pulling out more of the peachy tones that are naturally in my lips with that kind of gold shimmer there, pulling out that warmer side, where Dancing Rose was pulling out more of the kind of rosy pink tones that are naturally in my lips. So that is Silent Sun, and now we can move on to some of the more pigmented shades. I feel like those two translucent shades just made my lips look so nice and healthy and nourished. I really liked the way those looked and felt. I think they'll be really versatile for wearing with a full makeup look, or with a no makeup look, or with no makeup at all, just treating them more as a balm. I think those are great. So let's move into the more colorful shades that I got. I think I will start with this one here, which is Rain. And Rain was one of my favorites of her new velvets that she brought out for holidays, so I was really happy to see a gloss version of this. It's described as a muted medium warm pink that instantly brightens the face. And it's described as having a light natural pigment level. So she's now done this thing on her website where she's categorized all of her glosses by pigment level. So the ones I just showed you were the no pigment level. This is the kind of lighter pigment level, and then there's a more medium to full kind of level. All of the new ones that I got are in that lighter level, and I'll talk a little bit later on about why I decided to go with the shades that I did, but a big part of it definitely has to do with that lighter pigment level, but I'll explain that a little bit more later on. So let's see a swatch of Rain. You can see there's definitely a lot more color coming with that one, and I just love it because it's a little bit of a warmer pink, but it is muted like Lisa said, and I just find that that type of color really works well for me. And as I said, because I liked the lipstick version of this color so much, I thought this would be a great choice. So let's see it on the lips. So there's one single application of Rain, and let's build it up. And that's 2 layers of Rain. I think because it has more color to it, I do see the difference between 1 layer and 2. I think both look really pretty and both feel very comfortable. I love this color. It has enough vibrance to it that it still brings a lot of light and life to my face, but it's not too strong, it's not too bright. I like the little bit of warmth in there, but it's still decidedly a pink, which I really appreciate as well. So that is Rain. Next up is Blush Lightly, which is kind of like a cooler toned side of Rain. They're both sort of mid-tone shades, but we're seeing a lot more kind of purpley mauve in the Blush Lightly shade. It's described as a medium muted cool tone pink with a delicate mauve undertone. And this again has that light pigment level. So there's Blush Lightly swatched, and you can definitely see the contrast between those 2 shades. And let's see it on the lips. So that's a single application of Blush Lightly, and built up. I do feel like this one might be a little bit more pigmented than Rain, but it could also be that it's just a higher contrast to my natural lip color, and so you can really see the difference between that and my lip color, which is a little bit warmer. But I really like this one too. I think even though it's cooler toned, it's really a very wearable, really nicely balanced color, and again kind of bright and saturated enough to bring life to the face, but without being overwhelming or too bright. It still has that kind of muted quality. For me, I do prefer Rain just because I feel like that suits me a little bit better, but I really enjoy this one as well, and I can definitely see this one working really nicely for people with cooler undertones, but also for cooler toned makeup looks overall. I think this will be really nice for that. So that's Blush Lightly, and last but not least, we'll try out Sorcery. I love how effortless these glosses look on the lips. They have an elevated, elegant quality to them, but they also just look so fresh and somehow natural at the same time. So let's try Sorcery. Velvet Sorcery was my favorite of the new lipstick she brought out for the holidays. And since I tried that lipstick, I really wanted her to bring out a Sorcery gloss, and she's done it. Sorcery is described as a cool-toned, earthy rose with a touch of mauve. One swipe will give you a sheer Your Lips But Better and built up. It's total 90s indie girl. And again, light natural pigment level on this one. Let's swatch it down here. So Blush Lightly also had that cool toned descriptor, but Sorcery has that earthiness to it, which Blush Lightly doesn't have. So to me, that means it has a lot more brown in it. It's just kind of even a more muted, sort of grungy color. And since she specifically mentions a sheer layer in the description, I'm going to try to do quite a sheer layer so we can see if it really does give that Your Lips But Better effect. So there's the sheerest layer I could manage with it. I just applied a little bit from the side of the doe foot on my bottom lip and then spread that out. And I would say definitely it does give Your Lips But Better. Of course, it's going to depend on your lip color, but because it has so much of that earthy brownness in it, it feels very skin tone adjacent without a lot of brightness. But I want to see what it looks like built up, so let's do that. So here is Sorcery Full On. Just like with the Velvet Sorcery lipstick, I feel like this is such a versatile color. I especially love it with green eyeshadow looks and with purple eyeshadow looks. When I did my video on the Myth eyeshadow palette, which is the purple toned eyeshadow palette, I paired the Velvet Sorcery lipstick with that, and I just thought it was such a great combination because the purple in the eyeshadow kind of pulled out more of those mauvey purpley tones in this lipstick. And then when you wear it with the green, it pulls out those tones as well, but it kind of draws the eye more to the brownish tones in the lipstick. So I just really like the versatility and the balance of undertones in both Velvet Sorcery and now in the Sorcery gloss as well. So once again, before I get into the other comparisons, just to show you those three new colored shades again. So Rain, Blush Lightly, and Sorcery. So although I didn't buy all of the new shades of gloss that came out this time, I do have all of the previously existing shades. So I'm gonna do the relevant comparisons for these new shades that I have. And I think I'll start out with the pinkier shades and I'll kind of do them together. So I'm gonna show you my comparisons now for Rain and Blush Lightly all at the same time. All right, so from top to bottom, we have Rain, Petal, Blush Lightly, Blush, and Beauty. And I feel like it's kind of hard to see these because there's so much light reflection. I'm gonna try to pull down the blind and see if that makes a difference. I think that's a little bit better. So I feel like we're kind of in a gradient from warmest to coolest here with these shades. Rain is definitely the warmest of all of these pinks. And then Petal is kind of a neutral pink, but I still feel like it leans more toward the warm side than the cool side. And then at this juncture here, we really shift over with Blush Lightly into the cooler tones. There's definitely a lot more blue, a lot more kind of a purpley feel to that Blush Lightly. Blush, I don't see a huge difference between Blush and Blush Lightly, which I think makes sense. They are essentially meant to be the same color, but Blush Lightly is just a slightly kind of lighter and more subtle version of blush, which was really, I think, created for people with more fair skin tones, so they could have that same effect that you can get from blush, but just a little bit lighter and softer than that deep blush color looks on fair skin tones. I just built up blush a little bit, so it's a little bit easier to see, but I don't really see too much of a difference there other than blush looking perhaps a tiny little bit darker. It's almost like I can see a little bit of a black in there. Not that it looks like black at all, but just when I compare the two of them, I just see a little bit of that darker pigment, but if you already have blush, I don't think you really need to get blush lightly. And then lastly here is Beauty, which is even more blue than all of these other ones. It's really quite a cool toned pink. You can really see that blue, almost violet note in there. And for Sorcery, I just have two gloss comparisons. This is Sorcery here, then we have Muse, and this one down here is Affair. So Sorcery almost looks to me like you've combined Muse and Affair and maybe added a little touch more purple or mauve into it. But you can see the differences there. Muse is a little bit more pinky. It doesn't have nearly as much of that brown feeling as Sorcery does. And then Affair is even more brown feeling. It's more of a kind of caramelly brown, where Sorcery is more of a kind of mauvey brown. So there's a lot more warmth and kind of toastiness in Affair. So once again, Sorcery, Muse, and Affair. And I also wanted to just quickly show you these three pigmented gloss shades in comparison to their velvet counterparts. So that's Velvet Sorcery and the Sorcery Gloss. Those look pretty much like a spot-on match to me. Of course, you're going to have differences with the sheerness of the gloss and the finish, but I think the colors are pretty much exactly the same, although there may be a tiny bit more brown in the gloss that's coming through. But again, it could also just be a function of the different textures and formulas there. In the center here is the Blush Lightly duo, so that's Velvet Blush Lightly and the Blush Lightly Gloss, and those definitely look like a spot-on match to me. I'm not seeing any kind of nuance or difference in the undertones in those two. And then on the end here is Velvet Rain and the Rain Gloss. And with the Rain Gloss, again, I'm seeing a little bit more of the kind of warmth coming through with that. So it's almost like more of the kind of reddish is coming through in the gloss. Well, I'm seeing a touch less of that with the Velvet, but again, it could be a textural thing. It could also be that my skin tone is a little bit warmer. So with the sheerness of the glosses, the warmth in my skin is going to come through more and just alter those colors a little bit. So once again, these are all the Velvet versions. These are all the gloss versions of Sorcery, Blush Lightly, and Rain. The three shades in this new collection of 8 that I decided not to get were Pompadour, Carnival, and Decade. If I had gotten 6 instead of 5, Pompadour would have been my 6th choice, but I just felt like I didn't need it. I already have a number of pink glosses now. I felt like it would probably be close enough to Petal that I would prefer Petal anyway because it's a little bit of a softer, more muted natural color for me. So that's why I didn't get Pompadour, but that one is also described as having that kind of light natural pigment level, and that's the reason that it would have been my other choice. With Carnival and Decade, I'm just double checking here, but I think, yes, both of them are described as that medium impactful pigment level, which is the highest pigment level in Lisa's glosses right now. And I find with Lisa's glosses, I actually need to use a decent amount for it to feel right on my lips. Generally, when I do a very, very sheer layer of her glosses, I don't really like the feeling of it. I find it to be a little bit tackier, almost kind of stickier than I want it to be. And I live with 3 very furry animals, and there's always like cat hair flying around. And I find when I have that kind of sticky level of gloss on my lips, I'll get cat hair stuck to it and stuff. So I just really don't like that feeling, but I do love the way that these feel when they're built up a little bit more. And so for those reasons, I didn't want the really highly pigmented ones. I just didn't feel like I would wear them as much. I'm much more inclined to wear the light pigment level. I can build it up and still feel really comfortable and natural, not feel like I'm overwhelmed by the color. And I just felt like with Carnival, it would be too bright for me to wear on a regular basis. And if I want that brightness, I can go to any number of my pink Lisa Eldridge lipsticks for that type of look. And similarly with Decade, I can go to any of my darker lipsticks if I want that dark lip look, and it just didn't seem necessary to me for my purposes and my preferences to get the Decade Gloss. So I think that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was helpful for you if you were interested in these new shades. Let me know if you have any questions or comments below. I always love to see those. And if you'd like to see more from me and you haven't subscribed to my channel already, I would love for you to do so. Thank you again so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.